I just finished swimming 44 laps at the local pool, and now I'm at this disc golf, I don't know, course is kind of a strong word. It's just 3 baskets, mostly for practice. And swimming is something that I only learned how to do in my 30s, really. And when I was a kid, we had a week every year in elementary school where we would go to the pool every day, take swimming lessons. They would place us in one of 3 levels, either the shallow end of the pool, the middle of the pool, or the deep end of the pool. And every single year I was placed in the shallow end of the pool, and I never really improved. I remember crying once when they were testing me in the deep end of the pool because I thought I would sink. And just as an adult, maybe when I was 19, I had a friend in college teach me the basics to where I was able to survive in the water. But it wasn't until I was in my 30s, probably, I don't know, 32 years old, I'm guessing. I'm 34 now, when I really decided to make it a habit to go to the pool and to learn what I could to actually become competent in the pool, able to swim laps, able to do a kick turn, able to do all of the normal strokes, you know, front crawl, backstroke, breaststroke, butterfly, side stroke, all of them. I wanted to be able to do all of them. And now I can. The most I've ever swam contiguously was like 74 laps, which is about a mile. And I've swam in a triathlon last summer, and I'm confident in the pool now. Am I the best swimmer? No, but I can swim and it feels great, and I feel incredible every time I get out of the pool. And it would make a really incredible introduction to this video on tiny habits if I could tell you that it was the book Tiny Habits that got me there. Unfortunately, I started swimming and learned how to swim before I even knew that the book Tiny Habits existed. But if I had picked up Tiny Habits before, I think it would have helped me to do that even faster and to feel even better throughout the process. Probably shouldn't have been holding the camera for that throw. I'm gonna blame it on that. I'm someone who's read a lot of self-help books. I have long been interested in how to be the best version of myself, how to build healthy habits that will propel me to the top of my game and maximize my potential, and yada yada yada. And among those books is Atomic Habits, which is a book on habits that I think a lot more people have read. That's just my feeling from the people that I've talked to than who have read Tiny Habits. Atomic Habits, I read that one. It didn't make a big difference in my life. It didn't really stick with me for whatever reason. I haven't read it recently. Maybe if I read it again, I would like it more. But from what I've researched, James Clear, the author of Atomic Habits, is more of a blogger, you know, someone kind of like me, an amateur, just interested in this stuff, collecting data and experimenting on himself and with his readers. And he wrote this book, Atomic Habits, which I think has helped quite a few people, as far as I've heard. But a lot of that book was actually based on research by B.J. Fogg, a Stanford professor of behavioral psychology, I believe, or behavioral science. And that's the author of Tiny Habits. He released his book, Tiny Habits, a year after Atomic Habits. And there's a lot of reasons why I prefer Tiny Habits over Atomic Habits. Number one, it's written by the guy who's doing the research, not just the one who's blogging, reading the research. And two, it is much more grounded and relatable and practical, as far as I remember. Atomic Habits, it's kind of more about grandiose goals, and Tiny Habits really does keep it small and keep it achievable and get you accustomed to the habit of succeeding rather than aiming for these big lofty goals and falling short and getting into the habit of failing. And that's something I'm going to talk about more in this video after I do a little more disc golf. Damn it, slipped under. Still working on those putts. I'm assuming if you're watching this that you're a human and that you probably have aspirations and goals, or maybe your aspiration is just to have aspirations, which counts as an aspiration. And so understanding how to form habits and control your own behavior over time is probably a skill that's important to you. Given that assumption, you should read Tiny Habits, or even better, listen to the audiobook. The author, B.J. Fogg, I think he gives a lot more to the audiobook because he is the narrator, and there's some extra content in there at the beginning talking about his own personal story. He grew up with a speech impediment that caused his voice to sound like Mickey Mouse's voice up through high school. Ooh, made a putt on camera. So you can imagine how humiliating that would be, especially in high school. His teachers would think that he was just being a clown and making a funny voice when he would try to answer questions, but really that was just his voice. That was the best he could do. And so even his teachers were giving him shit for sounding like Mickey Mouse. And it took a long time and a lot of habitual behavioral modification for him to intentionally treat himself and get his voice to sound like a normal adult male's. And yeah, it sounds a little bit gravelly, but it doesn't get in the way of the listening experience. And you can also imagine growing up with that much self-consciousness around your voice, the prospect of narrating your own audiobook that you wrote, that must feel like a huge victory. And that's kind of the theme of this book, is by focusing on nurturing tiny habits that give you victories every single day, because you're focusing on those little wins, over time they will grow into huge changes and huge victories in your life. This book is chock full of wisdom and practical tips, both for building healthy, productive habits that you want in your life and for deconstructing habits that are holding you back, or even behaviors that are destroying your life. And specifically, B.J. Fogg does say that this isn't a manual for self-treatment for addiction, but I know personally, as a coach of people struggling to overcome addiction, that the advice and the knowledge in this book can help immensely in combination with other aspects of that recovery plan. And I'm not going to try to tell you all the wisdom in there, nor would I want to, but I will tell you a few of the essential basics and some of the things that stuck with me the most and have made the biggest difference in my life. The first thing to understand is an equation. B equals MAP. Behavior equals motivation plus ability and prompt. So with this equation, when you thoroughly understand it, it can allow you a lot more power over your own behaviors and your own actions. For a behavior to happen, for you to do something, there has to be the motivation to do it. That motivation can be something positive, like I want to cook a healthy meal for me and my family, or it could be something that's coming from the inclination to avoid pain or consequences, like I want to jump out of the way of this bus that's barreling towards me. The next factor required in order to actually do the behavior is the ability. You have to have the ability, you have to be able to do the thing. And the third is prompt. There has to be something that cues you in that it's time to do the thing. And that could be your alarm clock going off, would be a prompt to wake up and get out of bed, or maybe a prompt to hit the snooze button if you're like a lot of us, me included sometimes. And it could be something internal, could be hunger that you feel within yourself, and that's your cue to seek out food. And there are many different types of prompts. And when you understand the different aspects of this equation, you can start to tweak parts of the equation to benefit yourself. So if you're trying to eat less junk food and eat more healthy whole foods, for example, you could look at that equation, and motivation is actually the hardest one to get a lever on and move the meter. So usually you'd skip past motivation because you're going to be motivated to eat junk food. You crave junk food, especially if you're in that habit. But you can tweak the ability and the prompt. So the ability, you could get rid of all the junk food in your house and fill up your house with healthy alternatives that you can snack on and that you can eat and that you can easily prepare. The prompt, that's kind of similar, actually. You can remove all of the items that when you see them give you that craving. You can also perhaps tweak what you're looking at online. Maybe you're Instagram is filled with feeds of all this delicious cake and pizza and all these different types of junk food, and that acts as a prompt for you to want to go out and get some junk food yourself. You can control these aspects much more than you can control your motivation. And by making it much harder to do the thing you don't want to do, and by removing the prompts to do that thing, you can start to exercise control over that behavior. And you can see how you can do it in reverse to help yourself do something you want to do more of, like eat healthy whole foods. That's what I'm talking about. Hope that was all in frame. So next I want to talk about the tiny part of tiny habits. And this he really emphasizes is extremely important. That's why it's the title of the book. All of us, many of us, myself included, have a go home, have a go big or go home mentality. Like, you want to accomplish something, give it 100%, smash that thing until you've accomplished your goal. And some people are able to do that. And some people are able to do that some of the time, but most of the time it doesn't work out. For me, that's kind of how it is. Sometimes when something is very important to me, I'm able to obsessively work on it and make huge amounts of progress. But most of the time, that approach leads to disappointment, leads to loss of belief in myself, and leads to getting accustomed to failure rather than getting accustomed to success. There's the classic example of, it's a new year, I'm gonna get this gym membership and I'm gonna go to the gym 5 times a week. I'm gonna work out an hour at least every time I go. And people can do that maybe for a few days, a few weeks, maybe a couple of months, most people, but then they start dropping off and the habit never gets a chance to firmly take root and grow. Think of this habit as a seed. At the beginning of its life, it is extremely fragile. It needs tender care, not too much water, not too much nourishment, not too much sunlight, just the right amounts, just little bits here and there as it takes root and as it starts to grow. And as it grows, it becomes more and more impressive, and you can feed it more and more, and you can actually start to pay less and less attention to it because it's taken root and it's healthy and it's nourished and it is able to take care of itself a lot of the time. Though you still need to keep an eye on it and make sure that there's nothing wrong and that it doesn't need any extra care. So in order to keep a new habit tiny, let's go with that classic example of going to the gym. You want to scale it way back to where a success is like almost trivial. It's almost trivial to get a success. Maybe instead of going to the gym 5 days a week and working out for an hour each time you go, you scale that back to 5 nights a week. I'm going to make sure that my gym bag is all prepared and ready to go. Because that's kind of the first step in going to the gym, is making sure all of your supplies, your gym towel, your gym clothes, everything you need is going to be ready. And so if you can focus first on that very first step and get used to doing that 5 nights a week and making sure that it's prepared and celebrating it, which I'll talk about it more later, then you're getting accustomed to success and you're getting that hit of pride in yourself every time you do that. And it's really easy, it doesn't take hardly any time, especially if you didn't actually go to the gym Monday. Monday night is going to be pretty easy to prepare that gym bag, make sure it's ready to go. And then once maybe a couple of weeks have gone by, and probably within that couple of weeks you have gone to the gym. Probably not 5 days a week, but some of those days you did go to the gym. But that was all extra credit, and that allows you to feel even better about yourself on those days that you did go to the gym, you did work out. But after a couple of weeks where your expectation is just that you'll get your gym bag ready 5 nights a week, then you can increase that. And you can change it to, not only will you be getting your gym bag ready 5 nights a week, it's in your car ready to go, but you'll also actually drive to the gym 5 days a week. And once you get there, that's a success. And you can turn right around and go home, sit on the couch if you want to, because you already succeeded. If you want some extra credit, get in that gym and start working out. And I know, guys, I know this sounds silly. I know this sounds like it's not worthy of feeling good about. But that is the essential crux of the Tiny Habits method, is to allow yourself to feel good and to celebrate these little steps and to really nurture the habit and get used to success rather than trying to go big and go hard and failing time and time again and getting used to failure and thinking of yourself as a failure. So now you're driving to the gym 5 days a week, and a lot of those days you do go inside, you do work out. Some of those days it's even for an hour. You hit it really hard. Some days it's just 10 minutes, you're not feeling it, you just want to go home. That's fine. You still feel good about yourself because you succeeded, because it's not about burning your muscles out to the maximum right now. It's about building this habit. That's what's important. That's what's going to pay dividends for the rest of your life, is building this habit, so you can take the time to nurture it rather than going big and going hard right from the beginning. Over time, gradually, you keep pushing the habit a little bit farther, but really do take it slow. You don't need to rush this process. Rushing the process leads to burnout, leads to letting the habit slip, leads to feeling bad about yourself. But even when you do take it slow, you'll be surprised how quickly you escalate in what you're doing. After a couple of months of taking the tiny route, you'll probably be going to the gym and working out 5 days a week, and most of those workouts will be really good, hard workouts. But if it ever does get more difficult, you get sick, there's more stress at work, there's more stress at home, whatever it is, you can always scale it back, make it tinier again. And by doing that, maybe it's a really tough week and all you can do this week is just make sure your gym bag is prepared. But by still considering that a success, you are maintaining that habit. You are nurturing that habit even when you're having a week where you can't actually go to the gym and work out for an hour 5 days a week. You're still maintaining the habit. So the next week, when you have more time, you have more energy, you're feeling better, you can get right back in to go into the gym and actually working out because you maintained that habit. You didn't let that habit die. The third aspect of tiny habits that I want to talk about today, that I already mentioned, is celebration. BJ Fogg writes that he believes that celebration should and will be considered amongst the likes of mindfulness and gratitude someday. So celebration is the intentional act of giving yourself a great feeling of pride and joy, and as BJ Fogg calls it, shine. Celebration is something that you can do before, during, and after doing a behavior or an action that you want to keep doing, that you want to make into a habit. And it's so important because habits are not built through repetition alone. Habits are built through a positive emotion that you get when you are doing that action. That's why it's so easy to get hooked on things that give you that rush of positive feelings, like junk food. When you're eating junk food, it gives you that physiological and neurological rush from getting those fats, those sugars, those salts. And because it feels good, it turns into a habit very easily. But you can intentionally make things feel good by celebrating them. You put your gym bag in the car and you celebrate that. You let yourself feel good about that because you know that you're growing this habit that's going to lead to you being jacked with an 8-pack in a year or two, whatever your goal is. And what does celebration look like? Well, that can vary from person to person. Let me pose a question and an exercise that will help you figure out what celebration looks like to you. Imagine the last time you got really good news, or you had some sort of big victory. Maybe you won an intramural soccer game, or you got a job offer that you really cared about, or the person you asked out said yes. Whatever it is, think about how you reacted physically in that moment, or maybe as soon as you were alone because you were holding yourself in because you weren't alone and you were too embarrassed to really let yourself express that joy physically. But how did you react physically once you were alone, or as soon as you got that news? Did you jump up and down and pump your fist? Did you do a little dance? Did you just close your eyes and just breathe a big sigh of relief and smile? What did you do to celebrate that amazing thing that just happened? Whatever that is, however you express that joy and that celebration, you can intentionally do that same physical and emotional act more often. when you have these tiny little victories. And you might think, well, if I waste all my joy and celebrate all these little tiny things, then it won't mean anything anymore. And I won't be motivated anymore because I'll already be content. I'll already have the joy and the celebration of doing the tiny little things. So where will my motivation come from to actually get to the goal where I can really be happy, which is how I've been doing this behavioral modification thing. But that's just not how humans work. You keep doing the things that allow you to feel good in the here and now. And if every time you work out or every time you get your gym bag ready, you feel amazing because you celebrate, you're going to keep doing that thing, and you're going to push harder into that behavior, into that activity. And you're going to reach your goal much more reliably than if you just forced yourself to suffer through it, promising yourself, okay, I can be happy once I finally reach that goal. It just doesn't work for most of us. Instead, by celebrating intentionally with every step along the way, you're bringing so much more joy into your life. And the more joy you become in the habit of giving yourself, the more joy you'll be capable of. And the more often you'll be just having an amazing time because you're celebrating all these things and you're pushing into those activities more and more because they feel good, because you're celebrating them. When you're taking the tiny approach and you're celebrating every step along the way, you start to get used to success. And success is something you're encountering every single day. And the story you tell yourself about yourself, the story that you believe about yourself starts to change. You start to think and feel and really believe inside, I'm someone who succeeds. I'm someone who wins. I'm someone who can change my own behaviors and can reliably create an entirely new life for myself. And that is an empowering story, so much more empowering than I'm someone who sets big goals and doesn't meet them. I'm someone who tries really hard for a few days or a few weeks and then gives up. Those are not empowering stories, and those are the stories that we believe about ourselves when we take the go big or go home approach, at least most of us. There's so much more to the book. Seekers, again, that's what I'm calling my audience now. Y'all are seekers. There's so much more to the book, and if you like what you've heard so far, if it's struck a chord for you, then I highly recommend getting the book Tiny Habits by BJ Fogg, and especially listening to the audiobook version. Celebration. Future Noah here with a quick channel update to tack on the end of this video. I rediscovered an old YouTube channel that I used to use to upload like some fitness videos and some random experimental videos. So that's where I'm gonna put some of my new experimental, more niche content, and I'll put the self-development and PMO recovery videos here on this channel. So I'll link to that in the description down below. Check it out if you want to.